Is it recording?
Yeah. Hi guys, and welcome to a very special edition of our Red Wine Real Chat on a Wednesday, but we're doing it really early today. So we've got water and not red wine today because it's a little bit early for red wine. But today, as you can see, we have a super special guest. So as you know, I've been talking about my jumpstart that I did in January and all the shorts that I've shared with you of things that I've learned. And I just thought I couldn't take this opportunity not to have Jay here to actually share the actual proper content rather than my enthusiasm. So Jay's very kindly agreed to come on today, and we're going to ask him a few questions and just learn a little bit more about the things that I've shared with you, because it's just been, as you know, life-changing for me, and I just want to pass this on to as many people as possible. So Jay, welcome to our Wednesday Red Wine and Real Chat. And I was wondering whether you could just kind of, obviously, just in a few sort of moments, just sort of explain who you are. I've mentioned that you're a co-parenting coach, and I'm sure lots of people out there won't have ever heard of a co-parenting coach. I certainly hadn't until I sort of found you on Facebook. So yeah, just a kind of a brief intro, if that's okay, please.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm Jay Skibbens. I'm in the States, for those, Chicago. I'm like south of Chicago, so big city, and then farmland, me. So not a big city guy myself. But yeah, it's interesting, the idea of co-parent coach. To be fair, it wasn't like it was something that I found on Indeed and then pursued it. It's something I feel like I've created all on my own. Like I wasn't doing this before. I was a teacher and a social worker. And then honestly, during COVID, when we were all in the house, I was listening to podcasts, and there were relationship coaches, and I was listening to their podcasts, and it turned like I just reached out to a couple of them and found out how they became coaches. And then I wanted to become a coach. I got certified, and I went through like trying to talk about parenting, because that's something I'm really passionate about. But it really wasn't until I started talking about co-parenting that I found that this is like 4 years ago now, there was just such a huge void that nobody knew how to do this. Like nobody was giving advice that wasn't legal. And what I have found in my 4 years of coaching is it all comes down to the emotions, and very few people seem to be equipped to talk from a place of experience and expertise to co-parents. Like divorce is one of the traumatic things people can go through. Separation, having a baby, and then not being with that person for the rest of your lives is something that nobody is prepared for. So really what I found is that this job is much more, I tend to be a life coach for people who happen to be co-parents, and the things that we deal with are, loss of identity and the tough emotions that come with somebody who's not nice to you, that you're raising a kid with, and just so many other things that can't really be covered by your lawyer.
Do you know, Jay, so I can't tell you how powerful it's been for me, and that loss of identity is something, haven't I've really struggled with, and I know I've got my call with you next week, I think it is, for my one-to-one. But that loss of identity of not being mummy all the time and what to do when the children aren't with me is something I know I'm sure I'll sort of explore with you a little bit further. But it's knowing that there's somebody out there that has got the expertise, and all that experience as well, I think is just so powerful to have that mixture. I know, because I'm a teacher too, and my child's gone through a few sort of really challenges in the last few years. But I know when I meet parents now and their children are going through challenges, they really appreciate the fact that I've walked a similar path. I mean, I know all our paths are different. So for me, it's just been, it has been, hasn't it? I keep going on about Jay, but it's been like I was so stuck. And yeah, you've helped me massively. So as lots of people know, I did the jumpstart with Jay. So I've been kind of lurking in the background, Jay, on your Facebook for a while.
Sounds scary, Jay.
And then I wasn't kind of sure whether to commit or what do I do? Should I join the group? So the January jumpstart was perfect for me because I thought, it's free. It coincided with my children going away for 8 nights, and I was not very good about that. And I was really quite upset. And I saw the post and I thought, well, this would be perfect timing. They were away over that time. I can commit to this. It felt like it was meant to be, because my partner actually at the time bought me a journal, an empty journal, so the bag became, just all felt right anyway. So some of the things that I've really taken from it just in that month, I've shared on here, and I was just going to explain the ones that I've really found helpful, and then maybe ask you what your kind of favorite ones were. So for me, the one that we got probably the most views around as well was the raw hamburger, and I've used that think about that so much. And certainly with that, the one-liner. But for me, the enemy, immediacy is the enemy. Is my ex particularly is it's not as toxic as I suppose some maybe experiences, but it's the messages. We get 50, 60 negative messages a day, and I was always just emailing and texting back immediately, literally immediately. It was a raw, like he was giving me raw hamburger, I was giving him raw hamburger back, and we would just. So for me, that was one of the ones I shared, wasn't it? About just pausing, giving myself time. So they've been amazing, and then alongside that, doing the bag every day. My children now, I laugh. I've incorporated it into them, and they get in the car. I'm like, have you filled your bag today, girls? Come on, what's your bag? And I find myself now almost thinking during the day, what have I? Oh, this could be a B. This could be my brag today. So it's been massively life-changing for me. Though just those few, and I know there's so much that we'll explore once I meet with you properly. But what would you say your sort of, I don't know, favorite might be the wrong word, but your most powerful sort of strategies that you share, or the ones that you go to all the time, or that you find other people say to you, yeah, Jay, that was amazing?
Well, and I really appreciate that, because I think it's cool to truly like hear and understand that what I do impacts people in some ways that I don't even see. So I think that's thank you for sharing that, number one. But I think two, that the thing that I would say is my favorite is actually what you started out talking about, which was like, it all lined up, like your kids going away, which was not, you wouldn't have picked that. You wouldn't have chosen that, but it lined up. Your partner gave you a journal, the January Jumpstart, which like, it wasn't like you asked me to do that. But all of these things happened in your life that were like, hey, here's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you had hundreds of previous opportunities that lined up just like that. But this time you acted. This time you joined the Jumpstart. And I think that what people, like when we go through that idea of like loss of identity, or what I really challenge people with is like, when did you know that your co-parents wasn't the one? Like, when did you first feel it? And more often than not, people are like the second date, the first argument we had. And as soon as you start realizing, oh, I've always known the answer, I've always had it inside of me, I just talk to myself out of listening to myself. And so what I think my favorite transformation that I have with clients is like, I just watch them get better at trusting themselves. I watch them get better at listening to themselves. And since you're in the community, you see it. Everybody who asks questions in there are like, what should I say? How should I handle this? They're asking outside people to tell them how to live their life. So ultimately, what I believe in most as a coach is, you're not going to come to me. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. That's your job. So I'm going to help you get there by, okay, so before you were immediately texting back and forth with this person, with your ex, that means you were spending a lot of time. So you have time. You were spending a lot of energy. So you have energy. We're going to see what happens when you give yourself that time, that energy, that focus, and give it to yourself. And then instead of it going back and forth between them and you getting nothing from it, you spend 5 minutes doing a back. You spend 5 minutes journaling. You spend 5 minutes going for a walk, clearing your head. And then that opportunity that presents itself, you're a little bit more likely to take advantage of it, because you're not spiraling. You're not worst case scenario thinking. You're not hating the world. You're not feeling hopeless. And it's just those little things that start to add up that 3 months later, that's how long my program is. It's like 3 months later, you've stocked all of these little things that you can go back to. And it's like, oh, I can handle this. I can do this. It actually has nothing to do with him or her. It's, I can do this. And then that just opens up everything for people.
And I think, Jay, that was one of my biggest things that you said right at the beginning, actually, of January. I put so much energy into him and like what he did and his negativity, and he was a narcissist. And some of the things you said, it was almost like, have you been seeing my search history? Because like you were saying about, I've been searching, co-parenting with a narcissist parent. I was like an expert at telling you what a narcissist was and thinking about him. And actually, one of the ones you said about accountability and turning things around and thinking about me and my role, and that was a big mind shift. And even now, kind of, I'm trying to, had a bit of a dip on the weekend, but trying to think, what can I do rather than what's he doing? I was just so focused on him still. We're 2 and a bit years post separation. And yeah, I really realized I was making it all about him still. And I kept saying he was controlling me, he was doing this, but actually I was allowing so much of that. And I can't believe in 31 days, I mean, I've got a lot, I've got a lot to work on, I appreciate. But in 31 days, what a shift it was. I went to my therapist, I said, and my teeth have like almost crossed over my top teeth because I spent all my years in my marriage grinding my teeth and they've cut them. And she said to me, "You're not grinding your teeth." And I said, "No, actually," I said, in the last month, I'm not grinding my teeth. And that's massive. I know it sounds silly because it doesn't matter what I look like, but it just made, I almost cried at the dentist because I realized that through this jump start and me committing to me and not to him really, that I'm going to have better teeth. But it's massive. My body's having a physical reaction to me thinking about me and not him, which is massive.
You're taking your power back.
Yeah.
And not giving it away.
Julie's very similar, Jay, to you. She does a lot of coaching herself. And Julie's always said to me about, Katie, you're the main character in this story. Like, choose how you want to walk on that stage. And a few things I kept on ringing you, didn't I? Jay saying something that you would
really
say.
Get on with him. Get on with him.
Yeah.
Similar strategies. And,
yeah, but that shift from thinking it was all about him to actually being about me. And the other thing that I really think is powerful, and I'd like to ask how you got to this point, because I'm still a little bit up and down, certainly in this journey, that one of the things you said, and it was the again, I ran Julie crying, was the sandcastle sort of journal, the meditation that you led up to. I mean, I was literally, we live in Jersey by the beach, so I know it sounds silly, but I see swimming all through around the year, so it kind of connected with me anyway. And yeah, I mean, I was literally sobbing around it, but it really hit me. But the nice thing I thought is where you said to me, well, so to all of us, it felt like you were saying it just to me, but to the group, just me. Just Jason. And that around it, this is an opportunity, like that sometimes things come into our life to teach us. And I certainly, with my daughter when she was very poorly, that actually taught me a lot and gave me a strength that I didn't know existed within me. And actually I'd not thought of this in the same way, that actually I have an opportunity here. It could be exciting, but I'm not quite there yet. And I wondered how you, without obviously sharing too much, etc., but how did you get to the point, or how could to be, I'm not sure, I think I can sit here and say this is an opportunity, I can learn from it, but I'm not sure I believe that yet. I'm not sure I'm there. I just don't, how do you get to the point where you see this as actually an opportunity or a positive, exciting phase? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not quite there.
I would say the first part is like not thinking of it as a there. Like it's like, what I tell people is like brushing your teeth. You're not going to ever brush your teeth enough times to be like, okay, I'm there, my teeth are clean, I'm never gonna have to brush my teeth again. Like you get up and you brush your teeth. You go to, like, when you're going to bed, you brush your teeth. It's simply what you do. So to me, I've now had enough practice seeing the world that way, like looking at my life that way, that it's just what I do. But that's been 4 years now. Or, like, I practiced it for 4 years regularly, but it was also like, you know, for me, I grew up without my dad. Like I met him 3 times total. There's a direct line from not having a dad to me becoming a dad. And then there's a direct line from like me, like my dad not being there, and then finding out that the kids I was raising weren't biologically mine, and truly being faced with another, like I could have left, I could have bailed on Rachel when she told me she was pregnant. We weren't dating. It was actually probably exactly the same situation that my dad was in. So it gave me a chance to work through something, heal something that he couldn't. You can't tell me that that's like accident or happenstance. Like that's destiny, that's purpose, that's a higher thing than just me, that's bigger than just me. And then it's like, I've also found that through coaching, the way that my mom used to like exist with me, because since there was no dad, she never remarried. So from like the time I was 10 to 18, it was mostly just me and her. When I would be in trouble, she would just yell and yell and yell and yell. And I learned, like, and this would be like I think that moms understand this, that like, it wouldn't be every day. It would be like weeks built up. And then I put the shoes in the wrong place. And I did it.
I would say that.
Once, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like,
That's
I don't want to paint my mom. Like, I love her. I know she loves me. But like, that was her way of dealing with things, was like, hold it in until she couldn't anymore. And then she would just unload. And what I didn't realize this at the time, but what I learned to do as a teenager was like, listen to what she was saying, pick out the one or two things that she was actually upset about. And then by the time she was done, I could be like, okay, I'll make sure I'll put the shoes back the right way next time. Or like, okay, I'll be home on time. And even though she talked for 10 minutes, it was really only one thing. And then there was like a time I was coaching, like a year or two into coaching. And a lot of what I do, especially the first call, is like listen to somebody talk, and they'll tell me all about their co-parents, and they'll tell me how terrible life is, and they'll tell me how everything just sucks and it's hard. And by the time they're done with their 5-minute like monologue, I've got 2 questions ready. Like, okay, well, when that happens, how does this feel? Or when they say that, what does it bring up with you? Like, I can, by the time they're done talking, I got 2 questions ready. So again, it's like, you can't tell me that what happened to me didn't perfectly prepare me for this job I literally made up. Like, at this point, there's no point in questioning, is this working for me? It's just, I know now that everything that happens for me is not even happens for a reason, but I can use it. Like, it's not, I don't think everything happened for a reason, but it's everything that happened is something I can use going forward.
Yeah. And that's what the sandcastle, what I loved about the fact that it was almost inevitable. And I know it was inevitable from probably the first date. Do you know, I can look back and really know that. And that's me to unpick, I know, but it was just that inevitability, but also the fact that it was so powerful when you said that when you look around and you still see you had the tools to build another sandcastle, it just meant there was some like hope almost, and that actually you could learn from that experience. And it was, I mean, I rang you, didn't I? It really hit home, that one, that it was just, it was just so powerful. Like, the whole 31 days, Jay, honestly. It's just
been a mess.
Yeah, because I think it was my partner and I, we'd separated just before COVID, and then we got back together, and then my daughter was in hospital in the UK. We were in Jersey, the Channel Islands, so my daughter was 9 and went across the UK. It was all very messy, and I think it was almost then hard to separate which bit was her health and which bit was the sort of the separation, and which bit was the first time and second. It just got all very messy, whereas the 31 days has allowed me to think about me and him more, rather than Rose, my daughter, being involved in that almost. It's just been, it's been really powerful. So one of my last questions, Jane, I know we're going to talk about it more like when I do my call, but the listeners all know that I find it, I just can't cope, which is ridiculous really, because I see my children a lot when I'm not with them. And I think I used to think it was because I missed them, but I don't think it is just because I missed them. I don't mean that awfully, because sometimes I can see them the next day. So it's not necessarily like at Christmas I missed them because it was a long period of time. But on Sunday, for example, I'd been with them all Saturday till the evening, because it was my daughter's birthday, and I was going to see them at 7 o'clock Monday morning. So it was literally Sunday. So there's no, but I literally woke up, and when the house is empty, and then I just cried basically all day, really. And I tried to go for a walk, I tried to do my bag, I tried to go to the gym, I knew I'd see my partner later, but I did just cry. And I find it really difficult to know how to be when they're not with me. You're better at this, aren't you? But I'm really not very good at it. So any top tips would be very well gratefully received. I can't shift that mindset of not being with them.
Well, and number one, I think that's such a common thing. Like, that is not something that anybody who hears that, like, oh, me too. It's like, yes, you too, and any woman, mom that I've ever worked with has felt that way. But I think it just shows up differently for dads. But what I found is that starts so long before, like, it's almost like the stage is set so that when you have a child, you vanish. Like, and then you being the mom, like the stage is set, because in school it's like, please the teacher, like, do what you need to do for good grades. It's like everything is outward. And then it's like, for a lot of women, it's like, be a good girl, do what you need to do, like, be like, look the part, act the part, so that you can attract a partner. and then you act the part and do the part so that you can attract a partner so that you can have kids. And it's almost like your whole life has been set up to have kids. And then once you do that, it's like, okay, now what?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't think that, and I think that this is part of the interesting thing of like me being a man coaching like primarily women, that it almost takes a man to be like, hey, like you need to exist outside of this.
Yeah.
Coming from another woman, it does matter. And I think that it's important to hear it from a woman. I think there is something important about hearing it from a man that's like, let's take a step back. Like you had purpose when you were born. If your whole life is like your children are your purpose or that they're all that mattered, you were that thing once. Like you came into this world with purpose. You came into this world with value. So a lot of what we do is just go back to, okay, like what did you like doing as a kid? Everybody, like a lot of people I talk to are like, you know, I used to paint a lot, or I loved singing, or I played the piano. And I just, somewhere along the lines, either my parents just couldn't afford it anymore, or they didn't want to do it because there was no future in it, or, you know, maybe we had to sell the piano after the divorce because of money. And it's just like, okay, so when's the last time you played a piano? When's the last time you did art? When's the last time you like went out in the woods and just, and it sounds so silly at first, like just frolicked? When's the last time you just like went out and just like existed? And everybody's like, well, there's resistance at first to it being that simple, to the solution to this problem that feels so complicated. There's resistance to the answer being, well, like maybe you need to sing in the morning while you're making breakfast. Maybe you need to take a class of pottery so that you can create something with your hands. Because one thing that I have my clients do, and we just did it yesterday, and it's always so beautiful because during the 12 weeks, people can come in at any time. So I've got some people at first week, some people at 6th week, some people at 12 weeks. And we did this identity pie chart. So we kind of make a circle and then like fill in the chart with like what you feel like your identity is made up of. And almost exclusively the first time people do it, it's like work, mom. And then, oh shit, like maybe there's a little sliver of me, the person, maybe. And then we just had 2 moms who have been in the program long enough to have done it for the 2nd time. And it was just so cool to hear them talk about like, oh, I remember the first time I did this, all I could think of was mom or employee. And I was like, well, I do see myself as a friend. I do see myself as, you know, a cyclist. I do see myself as so many different things. And it's really like you talked about, there's a mindset shift that happens when you kind of pause. And I think that's where the immediacy comes in. You can't fix everything right now.
Yeah.
So if you can pause and be like, oh, I do actually really like art. I do really like to do this. I do have purpose. I can't exist outside of preventing hardship for my kids and thinking about my co-parent all the time. And it's in that 12 weeks, it's like, just to hear them talk about it, I didn't even think about.
Sorry, my random cat going there.
It's okay. It's just like, it's so cool to see that transformation because it's them. It's not like, they're not saying, Jay, you did this. Jay, you taught, like I'm seeing it a different way. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling it. And it's just like, cool, like that.
Yeah. Powerful, isn't it? That's what I need to, that's what I think
what you do. Write down what you love.
Well, I did a short when you did the 100 and writing down 101. I got to 48.
Which is good.
And actually it made me really think about what I wanted. And actually I managed to do the first one, didn't I? And I was like having a little dance because I'd had my head in the sand over something and I ticked it off. But I like write poems, and it made me think, oh, do you want to share? And actually it ended up being my daughter was had an eating disorder, and I'd written a poem about how I felt when she was at her worst. And yesterday I got an email. Actually, I'd shared it on the hospital she was in. They asked me for something last week for Children's Mental Health Week. Anyway, and then the therapist reached out yesterday and asked me if I could send it to her to send to another parent. And it just only little, obviously tiny things, but on it made me just think I wanted to write more poems. And actually one day I'd love to take that further. And I'd had conversations with you around that years ago, but done nothing about it. And even though I only got to 48, it was so powerful. And I literally sat, and then I'd be out walking or at the gym and I'd think, I want to do that. Like I said to you about my teeth, I might finally get a brace done, because I've always said there's no point, because you keep grinding your teeth, and just, yeah, that was a really powerful thing to do, just to sit and think, what do I want? Because if I'm being really honest, when you first gave us that kind of task, I think for the first hour I wrote down one or two, and they were very obvious things, like I'd like to pay off debt. Do you know, it was kind of
nothing for you, really.
No, and they were just very immediate things that I needed to be able to do, rather than just to have a bit more fun, and and every time it's on my iPad as a list, and I'm determined to get past 48.
You keep reading it.
I need to read it more, probably.
Seeds,
yeah,
and continue to read it, and then it broadens out your awareness, doesn't it?
And keeps reminding
things will pop up, like that lady with the poem.
I know.
It's like that wouldn't probably happened if you hadn't have.
Well, no, because they reached out to me and asked me, they wanted a carer's perspective, and I sent them my normal sort of spiel about what it had been like for us. And then I thought, I'm just going to say, I also wrote this poem and it helped me. And I thought, if it just sits there, then it just sits there. And then the admin had then passed that on to their family therapist and said, could you share it with another family? And I just thought, I know it's only tiny, but it just was lovely that there's that. I think if someone, when I'd been in that position, if someone had been able to share because my daughter now is thankfully very well, if someone had been able to share that hope with me, I think I would have really liked that. So it was, but that was down to thinking, gosh, I used to write poems, that's how I used to express and manage my emotions, and I haven't done that. So I've written about 4 now about divorce, which will probably not go anywhere, but it's just, again, I can do it. And I suppose that's something that I should try and think about doing when the girls are with their dad, and having that time to do it.
Yeah.
So I know the answers, it's just in the moment.
nice music, and get your poem book out. It's like,
I know. Well, I'm just crying and eating minstrels.
Yeah.
But not ideal. But sorry, Julie, I've taken over everything.
No, it's fine.
But have you got anything that because obviously I've talked a lot about Jay, anything that you want to ask, or?
Yeah. Only really before we end, you've got anything that for our viewers could take away, or we're going to share the link to your group and things that you're doing, so they can, maybe tag on some things and get some knowledge and some excitement, like you brought to Katie. So if you can do that for Katie, you can do that for our viewers. But is there anything that we could, any inspiring quote or anything that you'd like to share with us before we finish?
I think more than anything, it's so interesting working with women, right? Because and it's honestly, I've gotten into same-sex couples, which has been a really interesting dynamic. But by and large, I work with moms who are separated from dads, and I think that what I would say is that at the end of the day, your ex is just some guy. And what I mean by that is you can build them up. It's almost like, my girlfriend now will tell me Jay, when you don't tell me things, I will make up stories. And it's I think that a lot of the moms listening and a lot of the moms on Instagram or Facebook that I've worked with have built their exes up into this scheming mastermind genius. He's just a guy.
Yeah,
just a guy. He's just a guy. And I think that what you're sharing is, especially when you start sharing your experiences, you'll hear of somebody else in the UK, somebody else in the States, somebody else from Australia that tells you that they've got just a guy that did a lot of the same things. So it's sharing your experience is so powerful, because when it's isolated and you're just up here, it is you're up against Lex Luthor or the biggest bad guy of all time. But then once you start talking and sharing, that's what happened with me about with my ex, is the more I talked about her, the more I realized oh, I'm not telling the whole story, and I'm leaving out the parts where I didn't quite match up. So I really can't overstate how finding a safe space and sharing is one of the most transformative things that you can do. One of the hardest places to make growth is in isolation. Yeah. So don't isolate. Don't keep it all in. Don't feel like nobody's going to understand, because everybody's going to understand. And if they don't, then they're not your people.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It is
and that the group chat that Jay created through the Jumpstart, obviously Jay's comments are obviously excellent, as you know, but it was the other community as well, where it almost felt like I'd written the words, but it was from somebody else. I'm like, wow, they're actually feeling the same as me. Or I said something about the guilt I was feeling, and someone else sort of validated me. And this is like obviously in America, like totally different worlds almost. But and often for me, obviously because of the time difference, when I was going to bed, people were quite active. So I was looking, and it was just so reaffirming that other people and were reaching out, or that you could support somebody else, because now you feel a bit sometimes weak, but then you think, you say something and someone says, oh, thanks, Katie, that really helped. You're like, oh, okay, I can. No, I mean, all of that
is the community, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think you said right at the beginning, Jay, like we all got married. I married my ex thinking this was it. I come from a lovely family where my parents are still together as yours, and I'm one of 4 where everyone's together, and like I don't feel like I have a manual. I think that's what you gave me and giving me, I suppose, as hopefully we go forward, but a bit of a manual, because I find myself looking around going, oh, this is not how at 43 I thought my life was going to be. I mean, everyone in my family, good old Catholic family, we got married, we have children, that's just what forever. That's just, and I suddenly was like, oh crap, this is not a life I planned. And I think you've helped me realize that's okay. And I know I've got a lot of work to do, but it's okay. It's not maybe as scary. So honestly, Jay, I know I keep going on about it, but it's been life-changing January. As our viewers realised, every time I popped up going, Jay's just told me this, I have to share it with you. So apologies if you get loads of random Facebook requests saying, Katie said, but it was just literally life-changing. I can feel it in my body, and I'm just excited that when we meet, so Jay does a very kind, does a 15-minute, isn't it, initial call, which is free. So, which is amazing, which I've got next week, which is I'm really, really looking forward to. And then hopefully then obviously we can join the different groups. And again, I know I keep talking, but Jay, you said something the day that made me realise, I think it was one of the group called The Creators. And I couldn't quite work out why it was called, and I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought it was Creators. And then you said something about, this is an opportunity to create a new life or create something. And I was like, isn't it? Just those word choices suddenly made me think, wow, this is an opportunity to create something. So so
an exciting start, isn't it?
Like,
I'm creating.
Because when you think about it, I go on 43 and but actually I'm only 43.
You're only 43.
Like turning those words around.
And you've got so many more fantastic years. You've got great years ahead.
With hopefully new teeth.
With a great new smile. You look great. Yeah.
So no, thank you, because obviously you've given me some hope, and I can't thank you enough. So I look forward to meeting you next week, and we really, really do appreciate you coming on here, because we know so many people, Joe, will benefit from reaching out and hearing you and your work you do, because it's life-changing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you both.
Oh, thank you. Next time I have to have red wine.
Yes.
Take care, Jay. Thank you, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.